Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're just going to wait a few minutes to start our session. Wait for a few more people to join us. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start. Welcome, everyone. I'm Gina Gaspard, a volunteer with the Heron Hospice Society and your host for this evening's session, Coping with the Holidays. I'm calling in from the beautiful traditional ancestral territory of Tsawwassen First Nation, where I'm lucky to live, work, and play. Tonight's presentation will be just under 30 minutes with time for questions at the end. So please feel free to enter any questions that come to you in the chat as they come to mind. This session will be recorded and uploaded onto the Heron Hospice website. You might have noticed that our previous webinars are also on the website to be viewed or reviewed. And those are advanced care planning, medical assistance in dying, and handling financial matters. For the protection of your privacy, because we are recording, participants will be on mute with the video camera off. And now it's my great pleasure to pass the microphone over to our guest speaker and highly skilled clinician, Marg Fletcher.
Hi, everyone. I was going to say it's nice to see you tonight. I'm sorry to not see you, but I know that you're there. I'll just tell you a couple of things about me, and then we'll get started with the topic that you're here for. I am a registered clinical counselor, and I've been involved in bereavement counseling, has been part of my work for close to 40 years. And I was on the staff with Delta Hospice Society for 25 years. I was hired first to train the first set of volunteers, and I worked in work with people who are living with dying, worked with the health team in Delta, worked with victim services around doing some of the bereavement work that I was doing. Primarily, I worked in bereavement more than hospice work as a counselor, and I retired from Delta Hospice in 2017. I still do some contract work in grief work, a little bit of work with groups sometimes, and also one-to-one counseling, primarily with another society that those of us associated with Heron Hospice know and respect in the community. It's called Lumara Grief and Bereavement Society. So I do some work with them as well. So I'm very pleased to be here. And talking about coping with the holidays is something that we did every year that I was at Delta Hospice. It was often an in-person meeting, which we're all having far less of the last few years. And people were able to come and hear each other's stories and share. We always tried to do it about maybe a little closer to Christmas, but not much, because the Christmas season just goes on so long, and it can be a painful time. It's one of the most painful issues for grieving people, is to deal with how to survive the holiday season after the death of someone special. This time of year holds expectations, many which can be unrealistic, where we are supposed to be joyfully celebrating with family and friends, but those who are grieving are only aware of a terrible hole in their hearts and in their lives. This time of year can underscore the absence of your special person, and we can just feel lonely, sad, isolated, frustrated, overwhelmed. So another thing to think about with some of the things we're going to talk about tonight is that ideas for handling this holiday season you can apply to other difficult situations, birthdays and anniversaries and other special days during the year. But we do the talk now specifically for that reason, that the winter holiday season, Christmas and Hanukkah and other religious ceremonies in the wintertime just spread out for a long time. It used to be that I'd be saying from Thanksgiving on, it's often even before Thanksgiving, definitely before American Thanksgiving, which is today, obviously. But often Christmas decorations are out at the same time as Halloween decorations. So we're just surrounded by it for a long, long time. So to help me know a little bit about you, if you could just take a quick minute, I'm going to wait a minute or two and ask you just to write down in the chat so that Gina can have a look and let me know. How many of you are here because you are grieving the loss of someone special in your life? It may be a very recent loss. It may have been a few years. Our grief comes and goes for a long period of time, and we don't forget these special people, and holidays can certainly remind us. So just curious, it might make a little difference in some of the things that I say, whether you're here after a very recent loss or it's been a longer time. You may be grieving more than one special person that has died fairly recently. Also, it would be nice to know if you're here primarily because you support other people that are grieving. Maybe you're a hospice volunteer, or a close friend of yours has had a profound loss this year and you wanted to come and get some ideas of ways that you could support that person. So if you could just quickly make a note in the chat, and I'm going to be quiet for a minute or two and then let Gina tell us when she thinks that she's heard from most people. And you don't have to say anything, but a general idea would be useful. Thanks.
So Marg, I've put your 2 questions in the chat for people.
Okay.
So are people here because they've experienced a recent loss in the past year? And if so, how many months roughly?
Yeah.
Or are people here because they're supporting someone else who's experiencing recent loss?
Great. And are you getting any responses yet?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay.
Now, I don't always remember how to do the chat. So if you take your mouse, if that's your situation, take your mouse and just kind of move it. Now I'm trying to see if I can find, where did I find the chat?
I've found it for me. I can see. Yes, so we have, I won't say the names because this is being recorded, but we have a man whose wife died earlier this year and had been ill for 4 years with cancer. And someone else is grieving the loss of her mother, who died on July 14th and had dementia. And those are the 2 that I see so far.
And we also have someone who's lost her husband last January.
Ah, okay.
Who was very ill, and somebody else who lost their 25-year-old son. In July. Okay, so I make at least 3 or 4 are new. Am I right? Within this first year. 2 people in July. Yeah. And last January and March. In March. Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much. Yeah, that's really helpful to know. And one of the reasons that I would want to know about that is not at all to say, because I think we all live in a society that can have some pretty unrealistic expectations about grief, thinking that you should, at the most generous side, people will often say, you have to get through the first year of all the special days. So suggesting that grief will just somehow be done after a year. And I think those of us that have grieved the loss of anyone close to us, or any very special relationship, even through a separation or divorce, but certainly deaths, or even having to move when you really don't want to move, losing your community, our grief can come and go for a long time. And one of the reasons to be aware, if there are new losses this year, we can go in and out of intense grief, but also feeling quite numb and a little bit spacey at times. So it can be extra hard to focus and concentrate, let alone to decide whether you can get into the mood for having a holiday. So those are interesting things. But definitely, I think when you've lost someone close to you, the holidays can bring memories, even many years out. Your memories can be lovely of holidays that you shared, but also bittersweet because there are no more of them. And no matter the age of the person that you lost, there's still those deep connections. If they're very young when you lose them, there's such pain that you didn't get to have more Christmases with them. If they're
If they've lived to a good long life, that means you've had them in your life for a long time, and it still can be a huge loss if they were very much part of your everyday world. So I try a lot to not compare and say whose loss is worse. There's no good way to lose someone that you love. And there was a rabbi who did a lot of writing about grief. His name was Earl Grollman, and he once said years ago that they are differently difficult. Not whose is worse, but they're differently difficult. There's different features according to the relationship we had with that person, and perhaps the cause of death, what was involved with that, just so many things. So every person that we lose is unique, and every person who is grieving is a unique individual. So with that said, I'm going to say a little bit more about the fact first that you're dealing with your grief before I get into specific things about the holidays, because grief, you are grieving and it's holiday time. So now it's a mixture of things, and you may have people expecting you to be excited about things that it's hard to care about, or that you're even dreading. So I think it's important to recognize that your loved one's absence is going to cause pain no matter what you do. It's not like doing the right things will mean that you won't feel any sadness. You just may feel a little more in control of the situation and feel like you've had some help in making decisions, at least. It's only natural that we will feel some pain because we are mourning someone we loved. I suggest that you try to be mindful of the pressure and demands, sadness, possible increased alcohol intake, and fatigue that can all come with the holidays. So it's an important time, as any time when you're grieving, to really think about your own personal self-care, to make time within the busyness of it all for rest, for exercise, to get outside and have a walk if you can, to take time alone when you need it, to set aside time for that, to recognize that tears and sadness may come and go as they do at any point in your grief. Let the tears come when they do. It's important that we give ourselves permission for any of the hard feelings that we're having, because I think often I've had many, many people start to cry and then apologize for crying. And I'm thinking, but you're here talking to me because of something very sad that's happening. I also don't judge people if they're not crying. Some people cry more than others. We cry. I remember after my first major loss, I was already a grief counselor. I was a whole lot younger, but I tried to set up a time when I thought it was going to be convenient to cry, listen to some music that would trigger it for me. And I ended up laughing at myself because I listened to this music that this person had loved and thought, yep, that's a favorite. And nothing happened. There were no tears. 3 hours later, I was wiping something up in the fridge, and one of my daughters was playing a song that had been important to me when I was a teenager, and I started to sob. But I was sobbing and laughing because here I had thought I could program my tears. And I should have known better professionally, but just as a human being, you know, we don't cry on command. So try to have some acceptance of your tears when and if they come. And for any other hard feelings like anger or frustration, I would suggest that you really watch your thoughts. And if you're mad at yourself, or if you're saying there's no point being mad, or I have no right to be mad, other people go through something worse, I think you're more likely to feel more angry. It's like right now, if I told you I was mad about something and you told me I had no right to be angry, that would work the opposite way for me. I'd get really annoyed at that point. And I think we have to do that for ourselves too. Just notice any hard feelings we're having. Tell ourselves we have a right to feel that. Why wouldn't we be angry or sad or scared about this absence in our lives? And then check with ourselves, and what can I do right now that might support me, that I won't feel guilty about? So if I'm really angry, probably shouting at other people that I love is not going to be useful. I'll probably end up feeling guilty about that. But I have a right to feel anger. So would it help me to go for a walk? Would it help me to call someone that I can talk to who will accept my feelings? Would it help me to distract myself because I really do need to be focused on caring for the children right this minute? But the big message to ourselves is you have a right to feel it. And as soon as you hear that and believe it, your anger tends to go down a little bit. And then you can do other things to help take care of yourself. So I would suggest that at this time when feelings can really be triggered. You may also encounter a bit of a conspiracy of silence from other people. Some family and friends may think they're helping you by not mentioning your loved one. They may think, oh, I don't want to say something to her or to him because they look like they're having a not bad day. I don't want to upset them, which for you could feel really frustrating. Like, it's not like I'm not thinking about them. I am, and I like to know that other people remember them and think about them too. So you may need to say, don't be worried if I cry when you mention the person's name. I'll tell you if I'm not comfortable talking about it right now, but mostly I'm pleased that you remember and that I can talk about them sometimes. So you can just let people know that. You may find yourself reminiscing about other holidays that you shared. For most of you, where it seems that it's been a very recent loss, you may have had other holidays this year that you missed with them, birthdays or anniversaries, but not yet a Christmas. But it's fine to have those memories, to remember what was good and what was hard about those other times that you shared. It's all part of the healing. And while I'm talking about just dealing in general with the grief, I want to mention briefly children. Some of you may have children in your life, either children of your own or maybe grandchildren who are also grieving this person that is gone. I would encourage you to include children in the planning for the holiday, depending on their age, of course, but allowing them to take part, maybe to light a candle if you're doing a candle of remembrance, or they could do a picture or make an ornament that you could put on the tree, just to let them be involved. And try not to hide your sadness from them. If they say, why are you crying? Or why are you sad? Just to say, I'm sad, I'm remembering so-and-so who died, and I'm really missing them. And if they say, don't cry, you can say, well, it's okay if I cry. It's okay if you cry sometimes. It's okay if we don't cry. And my tears always stop, don't they? I've never cried for a whole day, just to help them be less afraid of that. Because if we say to kids, oh no, don't be silly, I'm fine, that is hard for them to trust us, because they can read us and they see on your face that you're not feeling that fine. And if you can say, no, you're right, I am feeling sad. And I'm also glad that I'm doing this thing with you. I'm glad that we're reading this book, or that we're making cookies together. But I was feeling sad for a minute. I was remembering that that person loved this kind of cookies, or something. You don't have to go into the whole story with them, but just something that's telling the truth and lets them know that they can trust you to tell them the truth, and that they can tell you when they're feeling sad too, if you can tell them. So now some other things kind of specific about the holidays themselves. One of the first things is to ask yourself and other people that you care about that you'll be sharing holidays with, whether it's family or friends, talk about what will be the most important thing for you in this holiday. What will make the time as meaningful as possible, but also bearable for each of you. And don't be surprised if you're very just open, no judgment, just curious and listening to each other. You may have very different ideas about what that could be, and they're not right or wrong. So some of you may think we need to do Christmas exactly the way we did before when that person was alive, because we know the things they loved. So we need to do the same things in the same order, open presents at the same time, decorate everything the same. Other people may say, I absolutely don't think I could stand to do everything the same. I need it to be different, because their absence will feel even more to me if we're doing all the same things. So listen to that, and then maybe really check with each other. Well, if what is the one thing that you most want to have happen, and what's the one thing that I most want? Are there some things we could give up on this year? Just talk it through with each other. And be aware that the holidays are filled with unrealistic expectations for everything to be perfect, that there'll be perfect closeness, relaxation, joy for all people, even for people who aren't grieving. Some of the expectations, I basically think that every adult is expected to make a perfect Christmas for their family and friends, and especially the children. And I don't know exactly what a perfect Christmas is, but I think most of us fall short on that all the time. So if we can be focused on what will be meaningful for most of us, and what could each of us give up a little bit of, without judging that somebody wants to do it right and somebody wants to do it wrong. So you may be trying to decide whether you can handle the responsibility of hosting or attending events, whether you'll stay home for the holidays. Some people decide to leave and take a trip somewhere, maybe to go and be with other relatives or friends, maybe to go to a holiday destination. And I think one thing to know about, there's nothing wrong with doing that if you want to. I think it's important to recognize that if you do go away, your grief goes with you, and that's okay, but not to be upset with yourself because you decided you really needed a total change of scenes. You're going to go somewhere tropical, and then you found that you were grieving, to think, well, we wasted that trip because it was different than if we had gone at a joyful time. None of it is a waste. If you're together with somebody that you care about, your feelings will go with you, but maybe it will be good for you, at least this year, to have a different scene. So again, it's just something for your family to make. It's not, doesn't mean if people are judgmental and say that you're running away from your grief, you're not. If you're aware of it and you're just deciding what's best for your family this year. I remember one young couple I knew, and their baby had died that year, about halfway through the year, and they both had very supportive families. They both decided that they couldn't imagine spending Christmas Day with either of their families that year. It should have been their baby's first Christmas, and they just didn't think they could handle it. So they decided, this was in the day when most of us went out to movies, not so much watching them online, but they went to one of the complexes with 6 theaters, and they went when it opened at 10 or 11 in the morning, whenever a movie started, and they stayed in that complex until the end of the day. I think they saw all 6 movies, and their families were kind of uncomfortable with that, felt badly for them, but didn't try to talk them out of it because they knew that it was what the couple had decided together. It's what they wanted to do, and they saw them on other days through the holidays, but for that Christmas Day, that's what they needed to do. And by the next year, they didn't want to do that. They wanted to be with family, and they may have changed some other things through the holidays, but that was very important. The problem would have been if the two of them strongly disagreed, because that would have been sad just to see how they could have worked that out together. But because it was what they both wanted, that's what they did. So you may decide to make some changes, maybe about gifts giving, maybe making sure that you maybe give gift certificates, or if one of the things that's so hard is imagining going out shopping in a mall, order things online or give gift certificates. Decide about sending cards. If you really enjoy writing cards, then do it. If it feels like a chore, I think people will understand. I think fewer people are doing cards these days anyway, but it really is up to you whether you do or whether you really just cut down the number of them. And things like whether you have different food at your dinner, if you do your dinner and your present opening at different times, that's all open to negotiation. You can create whatever you think will be the best for your family. If you're used to going to religious church services or other community holiday events, talk about that as well. Some people who are grieving, even if they have a religious faith that was really important to them before, when they're grieving, sometimes they feel quite uncertain about what they believe. They're sorting it out. They may have some anger. Other people feel very, very supported by their faith. They might want to be at church services around the holidays more than anything else because of what's happening for them with that. Again, it's something to talk about and just choose what works best for you and your family. Then also talk about the things that the person that died, if they were old enough to have had certain things that they did at Christmas, if that was the person that hung your outside lights, or that was the person that made everybody's favorite cookie, just decide whether you still want that activity to be done and who will do it if that person can't do it. You may decide not to have those lights that year, or you may think, nope, we're doing those lights absolutely in that person's honor, so who's willing to put them up instead? So just have those conversations. You may find over time that you actually create some new traditions, and you may really hold on to some traditions and quite enjoy them over time. Some people decide that what's going to help them is to do something for other people in honor of the person that died, giving a gift in memory of the person that died, or donating the money that you would have spent on someone's gift to a special charity, or adopting a family in need for the holidays. One family that I know had a 5-year-old daughter who died, and that's what they decided to do. All the grandparents and the parents and the aunts and uncles didn't feel right not getting a present for that little girl, that especially that first year, but they did it afterwards a few times too, I think. But they all put in the money they would have spent on a gift for her, and that went to a family that needed some help having a Christmas. And that really, I mean, obviously it was still very, very hard to not have that little girl there, but they felt good doing something in her name and thinking of another family having some pleasure at Christmas. Another family had, during the year when the brother and son in this family had died, they had a memorial bench put in Stanley Park. And so a few weeks before that first Christmas, the family went down with a wreath and some other decorations and decorated the bench in his honor. And when one of the family members went back a day or two later, the decorations were all gone from the fence or from the bench. The family was very upset, but then they got talking about it, and they started talking about, you know, I think there's some homeless people that live in Stanley Park. And if some of them have that wreath or those decorations hung on some trees where they're staying, that's pretty cool. And he might have liked that. So they went back a few days later with way too many decorations and over decorated the bench again, hoping that the decorations would go and that they would end up giving some joy to somebody. And I think they did that for a few more years. They would go down and really, 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 really decorate that bench and hope that things would get. So it's, you know, it's making your best choice about what might be meaningful for you and then going with what happens after that. You may find that it's really good when you're visiting with family and friends to tell stories about the person that had died. And that's where you may run into some of that concern that people have about having you talk about the person. But you could tell them that it really feels good to be able to remember and to tell stories. One of my younger brothers died in 2009, and I never forget listening to him sing Christmas carols. That's a huge memory for me. He had a wonderful voice, and whenever people are singing carols, I can just imagine his voice blending in. It brings tears to my eyes sometimes, and it brings me great joy just to remember that voice. Another thing that some families have done is to hang the person's stocking up, and members in the family or friends that come into your home can write a note to that person and put it in the stocking, or put in some little thing that reminds them of the person, and they just find that helpful. Other people would find that too sad to see the stocking not being filled with things that person might have wanted, but it's another choice that some families have found quite meaningful. And a last example I have of a unique thing that a family did. One of the men who used to be a volunteer at Delta Hospice shared with us, so I can share it. I won't say his name. You might or might not know him. It's been a lot of years since he was a volunteer. But his mother had died this one year, and he said that at Christmas, they left an empty chair for her at the table, the chair where she would have sat. And they poured a half beer and put it at that place. and then laughed by the end of the meal that there was still beer there, because every year his mother would ask for half a beer for Christmas dinner, no other time during the year, a half beer, and she rarely finished it. And she would say, put the other half in the fridge and I will drink it next year. And of course, somebody else always took care of the other half beer. But for them, there was some sadness in missing her, but there was also laughter when people said, yep, look at the beer, it's still sitting there. So there's creative different things that can bring some laughter and some tears that you may choose to try. One other thing is about deciding on what things to go out to. We need to pay attention to our limits and our boundaries. People may be concerned and determined to not let you be sad or alone. Tell them that what you need and how they can best help. So for example, if you get invited to something that maybe you're tempted to go to, but you're worried that it might feel like too much after a while, like maybe you've been invited to a work Christmas party or to a friend's annual thing that they throw. If you're interested in going to a certain extent, I would say go, but to have a plan B, and so you could tell the person up front, or the people, if it's an organization that's invited you, that you're really pleased to be invited, you'd like to come, but you find yourself getting really tired quite soon, or you can get overwhelmed if there's a lot of music and other things going on, so that you may leave a bit early. But for them, please not to worry about that if you do. Just know that you were glad you're invited and you'll leave. And the reason to tell them up front is, if you go and you start to feel like I have to get out of here, if you go up to say goodbye, people may say, well, did somebody offend you? Or what can we do? How can we help you have fun? And it becomes a bigger deal where you're now feeling overwhelmed, like you're really ready to go, and not wanting to say, nobody offended me, or maybe somebody did, but I just have to go. You just say, that's great, and I'm really glad that I was here, and it's time for me to go. And part of your backup plan can be, if you drove with someone, if you drove them, to see if they are going to want to ask them ahead of time if they would want to go when you do, or to make sure that there's somebody else that can drive them home. Or if they drove you, that you have a plan, you could take a cab or someone else will drive you home, so that you don't feel trapped. And when you have those things in place, you may find that you enjoy yourself more than you thought you would, and that you're one of the last ones to leave, but you go in with a backup plan. So consider trying that. And you may just want to pass on things, especially for many of you where it's the first year. You may not want to do many of those things, but just it's a suggestion if that would happen for you. So another last few points, and then I want to open it for questions. I would suggest that you utilize other resources that may be available if you're wanting them. So, for example, if you are part of a church community, sometimes they put on what many will call a Blue Christmas service sometime before Christmas, when you know that they will be focusing on offering support to people in their community who are sad and missing someone. They may have a tree that everyone can hang their person's name on that tree. Even if you're not part of a church community, if there is a church around you that is offering it, you could go to something like that if that would feel supportive to you. If you want to just read more information about coping with the holidays, Google that phrase. I did that when agreeing to do this, and I saw all kinds of stuff came up. So that's something you could try. And one other thing, the Lumara Grief and Bereavement Care Society that I mentioned, that is known to Heron Hospice folks and to me, that I do some work for them. They are putting on a one-day online event before Christmas. It's called Interlude, a holiday grief gathering. And it's on Sunday, December the 4th, this year, 1922. Or 2022. There's a flashback, 2022. So if you happen to be listening to this after December 4th of this year, that event won't be open, but you can check with any bereavement organizations around you at the time to see if they're hosting events. And this one that will be happening this December will have 4 online events during the one day. One is specifically for adults, and 2 or 3 would be fine for families. There's one which is doing a sing-along to some Christmas songs, and another one is a family art project where one of the art therapists will be showing an art project that families could do together to make something to honor the person that they've lost. So their website is lumarasociety.org. So feel free to Google that or go straight to that website if you'd like to sign up for that on December 4th, 2022. One thing that I've heard many people say after the holidays is that the anticipation for it was worse than the actual day, that it was so hard trying to decide what to do. And when Christmas Day came, it was sad, but it felt more manageable, and they felt a little bit prepared. And they were also prepared to change their plans if they wanted to, because they had been practicing some of those things, especially of really kindly checking in with each other to see what each person needs and what each person could let go with the people that you're going to be sharing it with. And then recognize also that what you decide to do this year can be changed next year. Sometimes people feel like once you make a decision, you're changing all of your Christmases. And this year it might feel like that. You might feel like, I can never again decorate that tree with all of those same ornaments in this house, in that same corner. I cannot ever do it again. Next year, you might think, I really need to see that tree, and I really need to see those ornaments, some of which were bought by that person or made by that person. And even if I spend hours crying over them, I need to see it. So that is just the way it is. And just remind yourself, for this year, this is what we will do. And next year, we will decide what we will do then. And that's okay. Another thing is just know that if you do find yourself having some fun through the holidays, that's okay too. And it does not mean that you're dishonoring the memory of that person, or that, you know, somebody comes up to you and says, oh, I'm so glad to see you enjoying yourself. I'm so glad you're better now. That can be frustrating because it feels like the statement is, good, I don't have to see you grieving anymore because now you're fine. But it's not like that. What happens through grief is that we learn to have some good times, some fun, some laughter, and we still really miss that person and wish that they were still part of our lives. We learn how to hold both of those, and it's not one or the other. So if you can actually have some fun and laugh or enjoy a song, even if you end up crying, that's all okay. It's all part of it. If you didn't love and care, you wouldn't be grieving. So it is a mixture. And if you can try to take some time to rest, reflect, acknowledge what we're grateful for, and embrace those people who are alive and in our lives now. Try to do that as well. So I now want to just read you a little thing that people can say when they're lighting a candle at Christmas. And you might want to write, you might remember some of these. And if you're lighting a candle for the person this year, sometimes people will get one special candle that lasts, the kind that lasts for many hours, and light it every evening through the holiday season, so that you can sit with that light and that warmth and just think about the person and think about the light that their life brought into your life. So this little poem goes like this. A candle represents our grief. The pain of losing you is intense. Its light reminds us of the depth of our love for you. A candle represents our courage to confront our sorrow, to comfort each other, to live our lives. A candle is the light of your memory for times that we laughed and times that we cried. We remember silly and serious things. A candle we light for our love and the light of that love that will always shine. We keep a special place in our hearts for you. We thank you for the gift your living brought to each of us. We love you. We remember you. And that was written by someone that some of you know that have been associated with Heron Hospice Society, and her name is Catherine Andrews. So she wrote that poem. So now I would like to, we have about 20 minutes left, I think, maybe a little bit less. I'd like to invite you to ask any questions if you have some. Gina will watch the chat.
Thanks, Mark. There's nothing coming up right now, but I had a question while people are formulating theirs.
Sure.
You were talking about the different emotions and how they're all okay and just sort of be with them. I was wondering if there's any emotion that's not okay to have.
Well, there's emotions that are if any emotion is wanting you to do harm to yourself or to other people, that is really understandable when you're going through a profound loss, but it's something really, really unfortunate that I would hope you could get some help with, for sure. It is not wrong to be angry. It is very normal to feel guilty, even when you have nothing to feel guilty for. I remember a woman telling me her husband died of a heart attack and she felt so guilty. She said, "Why did I ever let him eat butter?" And then she laughed and she said, "We didn't have a relationship when I was telling him every day what he could eat and not eat. And I know some people eat butter well into their 90s and they don't die of a heart attack." But because when you love someone, you would do anything for them that you could. So it's quite normal to feel guilt. And anger too, you may feel like, I really resent people whose lives are okay, and you feel guilty for that because it's not like you wish somebody else would go through it, but it can be hard to imagine, why did this happen in our family? Did we kind of think that there's cause and effect? Did our family do something to deserve this? Or if you've had a few losses in a short period of time, and you know other families that haven't lost anyone close to them in some time, we wonder if that should make sense. And you have every right to wonder those things. Yeah. I don't know if that answers the question, but
it does. And if a person were feeling or having ideas of harming themselves, what would you suggest that they do?
I think that it'd be important for them to tell someone that they're close to and to talk to their doctor about that. Quite often, and I'm glad actually that you raised that, because I had many people over the years say things that were grieving profoundly for people very close to them. And they would say, "I just don't see any point in carrying on. I just can't imagine. I don't want to go on living without that person as part of my life." And if I would say, "Are you thinking about killing yourself?" Often, way more often than not, they would say, "Absolutely not, because I know what my family is going through with one loss. I couldn't do that to my family, but I just feel," and they were glad to be safe to say that it just hurt that much, that they wanted the hurt to stop, but they were not actually thinking of suicide because they wanted to be there for the other people that they cared about and to have those people not have another huge loss. So if you are having those thoughts, people may say, "Are you thinking about taking your own life?" And if you really are, I would hope that you could get some support. But I would also urge you to be able to say, "No, I just need you to know it's really hard right now for me to imagine caring about life again. I can't imagine," like even when you heard me a little while ago saying it's fine to have joy, and you can also have grief, that you could hold them both. There are times when the idea of joy just seems like impossible.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You have a few comments.
Mm-hmm.
And, we're due to finish at 6:15, but I think we started.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry about that I talked on too long for the questions.
Not at all. So let's address these questions and then we'll wrap up. So if
Okay.
people are okay with that, we'll go over just maybe 3 or 4 minutes.
Okay.
So one person was asking about the Lumera Society counseling services and what are the fees for one-to-one?
They have regular counseling fees, but they also have ways of supporting for families that can't manage those fees. So it's worth calling them if you want to. You can get some support if you live in Delta. You can get some support with your grief at Heron Hospice Society, but also if you want, Lumara Society is little bits all over BC because so much has happened online this year. They actually have an office in New Westminster, but they have online support. So you can contact them. And Lumara is Lumara, and then society, all lowercase, lumarasociety.org. And send it info at if you want, and then ask about any workshops, groups, and also individual counseling. And when they tell you the counseling fee, I'm not going to say exactly what it is because it may have changed in the last few months, so I don't want to lead you astray. If some people have extended health plans that will cover, but don't hesitate to say, I would need some help with that fee. And there's other things that you could attend for free. So it's worth asking. Yeah.
Awesome. That's great, Marg. Other people have left comments, and they're not really questions. And one is in regards to just feeling, I won't read the direct message, but feeling guilty about sort of bringing everybody else down around them.
Right.
With their own sadness. And the second comment is about all the things that the wife wanted to do that has passed, and
Right.
all the things that she enjoyed doing, and worried that if that doesn't carry on, that somehow they're letting the person
letting that person down. Yeah. Yeah. So I think for that one, it's you can talk with the other people that care about her, and maybe even if you can talk to her within your own heart and say, for example, I know you loved that we always decorated the tree with a house full of people there on the Sunday before Christmas, for example. I know you loved that day. I absolutely can't face that right now. I'm going to think about it on that Sunday, and I hope I'll be able to do it next year. And I would imagine that she might smile at that and say, for sure. Or you might find a way with other people that knew her to pull off some of those things if you feel like, even if it's going to be really hard, you will feel better having done it than not. Yeah. And what was the first part? Oh, the
being a Debbie Downer, I guess.
Yes. Yeah, I think if people are worried about that, I kind of think that's their problem, but I don't think that most people will. And if you say, if they say, so like a woman I talked to lately, her daughter died, and a friend asked her to a gathering this year that she would always go to. And she said, no, I really can't this year. And the woman said, well, have a Merry Christmas anyway. And she thought, like, doesn't this person know that I'm avoiding this event because I really don't feel up for Christmas? But she didn't. She thought, well, no, that's just what that person would think. Other people that were there contacted her and said, oh, we're so sorry that she said that. And, you know, she just gets excited about Christmas. And she understood that. So I think you can say to people, I know, don't worry that I'm sad. I just am sad. And I also care about you guys. And if I've come today, I'm willing to be here, and I appreciate seeing that the rest of you are having a good time. It's just sad for me. And then also just check with yourself too, though. Would I feel guilty if I actually enjoyed a bit of it? Would I worry that people might think that that meant I didn't care? And it might not. You might say to people, I know that I am down a lot. I truly am. I miss this person so much. And sometimes I enjoy things, and I feel good because I know it's something that person loved too. So it confuses me sometimes. I feel one way or the other, but it's all part of it.
Yeah. Gosh, Mark, I think we could carry on and talk about this for another hour, and I'm so sorry that we have run out of time. Thank you so much. And
you're welcome.
You've given us so many tips and so many ideas, both just examples and personal experiences. Really made it meaningful to to be able to move forward. And some things that you said that really resonated for me is just focus on a meaningful moment. Doing that, and also telling people what you need.
Yeah.
Those were two things that really stuck with me. So thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you to those of you who attended today, and you will be getting a follow-up, I believe a follow-up email so that you'll have the link that you can review this at a later time. So have a good evening, and thank you for joining us.
Yeah. My best wishes for each of you to make this as peaceful a holiday as you can. Bye for now.